Hey everybody, Adrian Garcia, County Commissioner of Precinct 2, and today I'm honored to be joined by Commissioner Rodney Ellis. Now the reason for us being here together is to talk about Black History Month, and no one has a better perspective on the history and the things that we ought to think about Black History Month than Commissioner Rodney Ellis, the Commissioner of Precinct 1. Commissioner, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for doing this. It's an honor to be with you.
Well, thank you. Now, when we think about Black History Month, here in Harris County, there's a little bit of history. Now, Precinct 1 has had really two commissioners, but three when you count Gene Locke. Now, when El Franco became the commissioner of Precinct 1, I think you knew each other
we did very well.
But when do you recall first remembering or hearing the name El Franco Lee?
I met Franco when I was at Texas Southern. He was active. He was studying either engineering or drafting, so I knew him sort of from a distance. A couple of years older than me. And then when I went to Austin, Texas, to intern for Bill Hobby, Franco was active with Mickey Leland as a volunteer. So I showed up in Austin '75. Mickey, Craig, Semfronia, Ben Reyes, they were in the house. And so Franco was one of those people who'd show up when there was a coalition of Black Democrats meeting being formed. Those groups were being formed back then. And then when Mickey Leland went to Congress, Franco won his House seat. So I was there, active, helping him run, because I knew him, you got me? And then when he and Craig Washington were roommates, actually I would keep their apartment to get out of my dorm when I was in just the dormitory, which you know, because your kids in Austin. But so I knew him very well. And then when I worked for Mickey Leland, you knew me from a distance back then when I was Mickey's chief of staff. Mickey would not want to stay at his mother's house, which is actually his address. So sometimes maybe I'd come in as chief of staff, get a hotel room, Four Seasons, of course, Mickey Leland. Mickey would take my room so he could get his rest before going to all those events. So I would stay at Franco and Kay's house. So I knew when they were building a house. I mean, it's a close friendship way back.
Well, and then speaking of Mickey, Mickey is probably between Mickey and Barbara Jordan. There's an incredible amount of early African American history here in Houston, Harris County. How did you meet up with Mickey?
When I was working at the athletic department at TSU, and he was in the State House, whenever something would come up and they wanted tickets to a football game, that was my job. I'd handle the tickets, so I'd see him around then. And of course, then when I went to intern at the state capitol, anytime the Black Caucus would have a meeting with the lieutenant governor, they'd dress me up. You know, I was the intern, but they dressed me up to sit in on a meeting. So that's how I got to know him.
Good deal. And then you went on to become his chief of staff.
Yeah. I would think that probably because I'd gotten so close to Craig Washington and El Franco, I think they were the ones saying, you know, if you're ready to try something different, why don't you take this kid who used to work for Bill Hobby. So Mickey didn't really know me as well as Franco and Craig, because when he went to Congress and they were state reps, by then I'd elevated my little status a little bit, you got me? I was in my last year of law school, so I had a little more stature there. But yeah, so he made me his chief of staff. I think, to be honest with you, he was trying to figure out how to get more people of color in key slots around the Capitol. So he put me in, tried me. I didn't know what I was doing. I was 26 years old, and I was his roommate as well. Good
deal. Now, to culminate Black History Month and the celebration of, and the history that's being made in Harris County, what's, you know, if you, I'm sure you find a quiet moment on occasion to reflect, and we always talk about when you were alone at the Commissioner's Court table, when I was alone as the sheriff of the county, but in your reflection in terms of where you've seen Harris County at and where you've seen it get to thus far? What's your message to the viewers?
You know, you have the distinction of being a first Hispanic sheriff. But aside from that experience, you and I are sort of similar in the sense that I may have been the 4th black person on city council. I think you were probably the 2nd.
Third. Yeah.
That's right. Sylvia was there as well, right?
No, it was Carol was there before me.
Okay.
Benny was there before me, and I think those were.
So my point is, by us coming later, we weren't necessarily the first. Early on, there's some things you could get because you were the first. People were just so happy to see one of their own, a black one or a brown one. Well, by the time you and I roll around, with the exception when you were sheriff, people want to see what can you do. You got me? So when I came here, although there had been 2 minorities on this board, there had been a black and a Hispanic. Commissioner Sylvia Garcia was here. She came a little after El Franco Lee, but you had 2 of them, and they had similar issues that they would focus on because of their constituents. So when I got here, you know, Gene Locke was here for about a year. Then I was the only person of color. And most people wouldn't have left the state Senate, probably. I was 3rd in seniority to come to Commissioners Court. I don't think I knew what could really happen here. But I didn't come here to retire. Some people thought I was doing that. Well, I kept my same policy interests. So it's pretty hard because I probably ruffled a few feathers, but they needed to be ruffled. You know, as you know, the county have no minority business enterprise program. They were getting away with a lot of stuff they shouldn't have been able to get away with, just hard questions that weren't asked. And I think it was because maybe at that point in my career, I just figured, what the heck, go for it. And I think they did a lot of things for Commissioner Garcia and Commissioner Lee that they didn't do for me. You got me? So I clearly was not the preferred one. So they probably rattled me a little bit as well. And that really made me, to be honest with you, I think, more of a policy wonk. Because I'd figure even if my issues couldn't pass, I darn sure knew how to put people behind the 8 ball. I'd raise them. You know, got me? So I would raise those issues. But it was pretty lonely. I mean, you go back and pull some of those tapes. I don't think I could ever be as mean-spirited to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle as they were to me. Now, maybe I deserved it. I don't know. But I would never be as mean.
When you're raising issues that people don't want to talk about, they may take it as an affront. But the reality of it is you're providing leadership that needed to be brought to the table.
Well, and Commissioner, things that most other counties with our diversity were doing a long time ago. Equity gap, just the basic phrase, the word equity, making it more than just a 6-letter word.
Or being thought of as a 4-letter word.
That's right, yeah. But no, it was, hey, it was rough. And look, I got a few battle scars to prove, but it's okay. You know what I think about? When you made the comment about black history and Hispanic history, by and large, we and our constituents don't know our history. I'd even say, even for me, someone who considers themselves fairly well-read, after the George Floyd deal and the New York Times did that big project, made me focus a lot more, not only on my history as an African-American, but the history of Hispanics. I always thought there was something a little suspicious when I was in the Senate and we go through the ritual over the Alamo. And just in simplistic terms, I always had a sense when, you know, you had to, for people who were in the English first, you had to speak Spanish. This was their land. For people who were in Christianity first, we had to convert to Catholicism. Mexico, Spain, Catholic nations. And the other big one was you couldn't have slaves. Now, common sense always made me think, now, what were they really upset about? You got me? But really, after the Floyd thing, a lot of books came out that made us all focus on our history. To learn more about that Underground Railroad, not the one that went north, but that was the one that went south. So really, and you and I are working on a project, most of us in my precinct, a little bit it's in yours, to go through a bit more the history of African Americans and Hispanics in Texas. You know, the largest city was Galveston because you had to be a port city.
That's right. That's where the work was at.
That's where the work was. And then after the Great Storm, that's where the slaves came in, too,
that's
by the
right.
way.
That's
The
right.
work and
That's
the
right.
work was the slaves.
That's
so a lot
right.
of times, even here in Houston.
Well, that's what I mean. That's where
Yeah,
they put the
that's
slaves
what-
to work.
Yeah. You know, I was out the other day and I was looking at right there where Allen's Landing is, with the Allen brothers, who fudged a little bit and said that body of water was navigable.
Right.
And it was.
And
when it was
pristine.
flooded.
And pristine.
Yeah, and pristine. But you could come up, you know, not all the way into town, but you'd have to drop slaves off. You could come up a bit of it to drop them off. But there's something that it talks about cotton and other things. We know where the slave auction houses were. Mm-hmm. In fact, here's an interesting tidbit I just found out the other day, Commissioner Garcia. William Marsh Rice's home was at the site of Cupido Park across the street.
Wow.
The
Wow.
most popular slave auction trading block in Houston was at the same site where the county attorney's office is now. That's why I put Symphonia Thompson's face. We're going to do this in your
Right.
precinct. If I haven't
Right.
told you, Brandon reminded me.
No, I
I did
I've
tell him,
been
I said,
aware, yeah.
Commissioner Garcia has plenty, everybody has plenty of stuff in my precinct, and don't tell me, but I do have downtown. But please come. But I put her face on there. The words justice for all are not up there because we couldn't put them on the inside of the building. We're still trying to figure that out. But that's why that face is there. We did add a green eye and a blue eye. And we have Lady Justice on the other side. So my point is, even I, Rodney Ellis, am having to learn my history. We think of Lady Justice, you know, like Lady Justice from Greek mythology is really from Egyptian art. So the first one
Interesting.
looked a little bit more like me, or maybe a little more like you,
Yeah.
as opposed to me. Maybe not quite my color, but the first Lady Liberty, Lady Justice, comes from Egyptian art.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
Well, Commissioner Ellis, thank you for sharing some perspective, incredible anecdotes, and a bit of history. I'll just close this celebration of Black History Month by saying that there's no doubt the community is better off today than before Commissioner Rodney Ellis ever became a public servant. I don't know what the pathway was that got you motivated for this kind of career, but I'm glad it happened.
Well, Commissioner, I'm proud to be with you. And I think all our communities, whatever color they are better off because of your leadership. Now having two women on this governing board, they both happen to be Hispanic. And look, I tell folks all the time, I used to joke with my colleagues, once you got here and Judge Hidalgo and some of my colleagues would be a little offended, I tell them, look, I've been in the minority all my life. Now, personally, you know, it's only in America.
Right.
It's been fine, you know.
Well, I won't go into some of the anecdotes I got because I'm sure we'll ruffle some more feathers. But with all that being said, folks, thank you for indulging us with a few minutes with Commissioner Rodney Ellis, reflecting on Black History Month, and recognizing the different steps and situations that nobody but the good Lord created for us that led Rodney through meeting El Franco, meeting Craig Washington, meeting Symphonia Thompson, meeting Ben Reyes. I think Mickey Leland was by far, seems to have had the biggest influence on you, from what I can tell.
Hey, no doubt about it. And you know, obviously dying such a tragic death at a young age. Congressman Al Green called me the other day and said, you know, how old would Mickey be now? And I said, well, I'm 68, so he'd be 78. And he said, you know, he's timeless. I said, it's a heck of a price to pay to still look that young and vibrant. But yeah, being his roommate early on in life, to have that much power as Chief of Staff to a member of Congress, it's not a day that goes by I don't think about it.
Good deal.
Be inspired by his work.
Good deal.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. There you have it, folks. A few moments with Commissioner Rodney Ellis to reflect and help us to celebrate Black History Month. These tidbits, these anecdotes, this walk through history, a personal history that led Commissioner Rodney Ellis into the pathways of Mickey Leland, Craig Washington, Elfranco Lee, Commissioner Elfranco Lee, Symphonia Thompson, Ben Reyes, and so many others. It has been our moment here today at Precinct 2, reflecting and celebrating Black History Month.